going to need to go ahead and move you downstairs into storage B.
No, I was told I could
have some
not.
new people coming in,
No,
and we need all the space we can get.
But there's no space.
So if you could just go ahead and pack up your stuff and move it down there, that would be terrific.
I was told
Okay?
I could stay. Excuse me. I believe you have my stapler.
Andy Biggs will be joining the program in just one moment. The congressman did vote, ladies and gentlemen, to oust Speaker McCarthy. Speaker McCarthy then went ahead and called him not a conservative. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
You, Paul Ryan.
Eric Cantor, yeah.
Now, all three of you guys have been essentially...
Well, we're not that young anymore.
Well, all three of you have been pushed out by so-called more conservative members.
No, let's be fair, and it's wrong that you ever say. They are not conservatives. They voted against, one, the greatest cut in history that Congress has ever voted for, $2 trillion. They voted against work requirements. They voted against NEPA reform. They voted against border security. They voted against... They don't get to say they're conservative because they're angry and they're chaotic. That's not the party I belong to. The party of Reagan was if you believed in your principles that you could govern in a conservative way. They are not conservatives, and they do not have the right to have the title.
Ladies and gentlemen, a man who Kevin McCarthy has, on his way out, called not conservative, the great Andy Biggs, congressman from Arizona, joins the show now. Congressman, I'd love to get your reaction to that last clip. Please, the floor is yours.
Benny, what do you say? I get it. He's upset. He said that while he was, he'd just been ousted from his dream job, and I understand it. So I'm not gonna stomp on his grave. But I don't think there's anybody in Congress who would step back and say, Andy Biggs is really not a very conservative guy. There's nobody who would say that, and there's nobody who's known me and watched me in public life for more than 20 years now who would say that Biggs is not conservative. There's nobody that actually ranks people who would say, hey, I think Kevin McCarthy's a little bit more conservative than Biggs. There is no one who would say that. So I don't feel the need to defend myself, and I also don't want to stomp on Kevin McCarthy, because what he went through was a personal thing to him, and for me, it wasn't a personal thing, and so for me, I just think that he wasn't the leader for our time, and I don't think he was a successful leader.
Can you please unpack that and unpack your vote against him?
Yeah. So there's a lot to say about why, and I by the way, I'm kind of hurt. Everybody plays Matt Gaetz's floor speech, but nobody's playing mine. It makes me wonder what happened to my floor speech. It kind of hurts, but that's okay. So I gave a floor speech for 7.5 minutes yesterday, outlining it, and I actually probably could have gone on for 20 minutes more. But let's just cover a few basics. Number one, why are we in where we are? So why did we do another CR? And that's what Kevin's talking about. They voted against the CR that did this, that. Well, first of all, a lot of the stuff that he's talking about was faux stuff. So when he says, oh yeah, they voted against border security. No, I didn't. I voted for border security in HR 2. Not only did I vote for border security, I wrote most of those bills, those 8 bills that went into HR 2 at one time or another since I've been in Congress, and they just got put into one. So that was HR 2. But he actually weakened HR 2 and put that in a CR and said, if you want to do this, we're going to create this narrative. That's what they were trying to do, is create a narrative. The second thing is, earlier, 3 days before we did his CR with the faux HR 2 in it, we all voted on a Department of Homeland Security bill. And the reason I bring that up is because we should have had those bills done last June. That's what we're required to under law. And if we would have done that, there's nobody that's getting jammed at the end. But he is part of the, he's lived kind of like in the Uni-party. This is what I predicted would happen last November, December, and January. I said he will go to the Democrats ultimately to get his votes, because that is what he has always done. So you get jammed on the appropriations bills. In the meantime, our national debt increased by $2 trillion. Our structural deficit is $2 trillion. Our interest into our budget is $700 billion plus. That's happened since he became the speaker. Now he'll say, well, wait, it's not me, it's the Biden administration. But you know what you could have done? And I raised this on the floor yesterday. You have the budget. And if you would have done the 12 bills, that's when the founders basically said, you have the leverage, you have the check. The check is the checkbook for the House against the executive branch, even against the Senate. But he didn't use it. And he didn't use it because he's part of the Uni-party. And so when he also came in and said, he implied that some of us were saying we were in places we weren't. I was there. I really was there when I watched them negotiate from $1 trillion in national debt growth for over 8 months to $2 trillion, to $1.5 trillion. I was there for that. Well, how do I know I was there? Because I watched it. Not only that, they called me and asked me to come in and to try to solve some people's problems. And myself and one of the lawyers for the committee, we wrote the language to solve those people's problems in the debt ceiling stuff, even though I said, I'm not supportive of this. But those people, they had some legitimate concerns. And what did he come back with? Benny, he came back after negotiating. He negotiated with Biden and the Senate, and he came back and said, all right, we're not going to have an 8-month debt ceiling lift. We're going to lift it past the 2024 election into January 2025.
Yeah. Oh.
Remember this? So it will not even be an issue. So Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, will not even be able to argue about the profligate spending or the increase in the national debt because he took it off the table. Not only did he take it off the table, he took the cap off. That's what he did. And so when people say, well, what's so bad about that? Oh, I don't know. How about the existential crisis we have? How about the inflation you're feeling everywhere? How about the failure to use the purse to enforce the border or enforce energy policy changes or enforce, stopping the weaponization of the DOJ against the American people? How about this simple thing? Stop funding the government that is attacking the American people.
Did Kevin McCarthy lie to you to get your vote for speaker? So we're hearing a lot of that from, a lot of chatter, but that this was effectively just the breaking of promises that were made in order to secure the speakership, and then he just wasn't able to count the votes ultimately, and he lied to people in order to get the gavel, and then thought that there would be no repercussions. Is that true?
I know he made a deal with other people. He never made a deal with me. I've never claimed he made a deal with me. But his veracity with me personally on other issues here before he ran for speaker. It's why one of the reasons I ran for speaker, and I told him this, is because he had been untruthful to me multiple times. And I know my colleagues are saying that he violated the deal. They've told me what their deal was, and he did violate that deal. Not the least of which was 12 single subject appropriations bills consistent with the Budget Control and Impound Act of 1974, which he violated. He was going to bring a couple of bills to the floor, a term limit bill and a balanced budget bill. Those were supposed to be brought to the floor. They were never brought to the floor. Yeah. He said, but they didn't pass. He said, but the term limit didn't pass out of judiciary. Well, I happened to be sitting in an impeachment inquiry hearing. I could not leave to go to that particular judiciary committee hearing at that time and vote. But you could always bring it up again. And if you would see, when you're bringing it up 9 months into the whole enchilada, maybe what you should have done is go back to the first time you add some salsa to your enchilada, which would have been January, and bring those bills up. He didn't do it. Benny, he didn't do it because he didn't want to do it. And so that's why they say he didn't keep promises to them.
I think people don't quite understand, how it works in Washington. It truly is that you are cut out of the process. So your voters in Arizona think, I'm sending Andy Biggs. He's a freedom fighter. He's going to go and fight. But you're left out of the process, right? Like it really is Pelosi, McConnell, Schumer, McCarthy. It's the big four, they get in a room with lobbyists, they write what the budgets are, and they give you 40 minutes to read it before you rubber stamp it. I mean, that really is the way it works, correct?
That's the way it's worked since I've been here, and that's why we advocated for the 12 bills, Benny. And guess what? Okay, I want to add one more thing to this. So almost little over 2 weeks ago now, they ran the Department of Defense funding bill, but they did it with the rule, and 4 of us voted down the rule, and so it stopped them from being able to just ram and cram, because that was the last bill they were going to do. From that point on, they were going to do this continuing resolution, where you would keep everything else pretty much like Pelosi, Schumer, Biden had spent, and with very little policy modification. So we stopped that. The result was they knew that they had to bring bills that had passed out of committee, of the Appropriations Committee, to the floor. So we got them to do that. And last week we did something we hadn't done since I've been here, at least to my recollection, is that we actually went to the floor. We ran amendments, argued, debated about those amendments from early morning till 2 or 3 in the following morning. So for a 72-hour period, we were able to get 4 bills brought to the floor for vote. And you know what? I voted for every one of those, even though they weren't the best, because the process was right. We got some good policy changes. We actually were kind of nipping and tucking around the edge of maybe the budget. You might have a chance the spending to bring the trajectory down. And you know what? When the moderates voted no on the agriculture bill, which, by the way, was the best bill of those 4 bills, nobody said, oh, hey, you guys are a bunch of jerks. You're not team players. What's wrong with you guys? And we're going to take you off your committees. You should be expelled from the Republican Party. They didn't do any of that crap. They just said, oh, well, hey, we had a little problem there with a little hiccup with the agriculture bill. But if I would have voted for that with 4 or 5, 8 other people, it would be Biggs needs to be banned for life from eating. That's where it would be, because that's the way they are. And so when you say, yeah, you don't get to participate, that's right. And when we finally got to participate, and by the way, I have no problem with those people voting the way they think they had to vote for the constituents to take down that bill. That's the process. But by golly, do the stinking process so everybody can represent their constituency. That's all I ask, Benny.
Yeah. I think that's what people assume is happening when they send you to Washington, D.C., and you're just not like a fundraising cog for a greater machine that's going to betray them and give Nancy Pelosi an office? Nancy Pelosi doesn't hold a leadership position, yet she has an office in the Capitol to fundraise for Democrats? Who made that decision? Did you vote for that?
I didn't even know about that, to be honest with you. I thought she had something going on because I'd see her go into this room, and then I'd see these bigwigs go into the room, and I thought, gosh, I'd like to be able to reserve that room for some of my meetings. It would be fun. But I didn't even know that was there until Patrick McHenry tossed him out last night. Didn't know.
Power's all about proximity, and when you can bring donors into the Capitol building and have them right next to the gallery, well, that's powerful. Yeah. And that's giving Nancy Pelosi a huge fundraising and power vector, even though she has no leadership rights. And she's this morning that you're breaking tradition. She impeached Donald Trump twice and stripped you guys of your committee seats and removed.
It's just Benny, and in the impeachment process, don't forget we didn't even have a committee hearing on it. And so the Democrats are beefing us because we're doing an impeachment inquiry committee hearings, and they went after Trump without an impeachment hearing. I mean, without a committee. I mean, just the hypocrisy is great. So we want to say we love you, Nancy, but you can't take advantage of us anymore.
Yeah, good. That's good.
Yeah.
And that should be a very positive thing. Speaking of taking advantage,
Uni-party, brother. It's all Uni-party. That's all that was.
This is the Uni-party. This is the Uni-party. Okay, that's the symbol. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see them do this during the press conference, you know that's the symbol.
Yeah, they're winking.
So the Uni-party protects Joe Biden, right? So you haven't heard a single word, never one word has been uttered by his best friend Mitch McConnell in the Senate about Joe Biden and his criminality. Matt Gaetz is saying that Kevin McCarthy is blocking a subpoena of Hunter Biden. Is that true?
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I've been calling for that, and I know Comer wants that. We want Hunter Biden to come in. Nothing. Think how impactful it would be to have Hunter Biden sitting there.
Yeah.
And he'd have to go to take the Fifth Amendment all the time. And when you start talking about explain this, explain money to your family, explain when you tell people that you were supporting your father for years, explain that. Were you really? That would be so impactful. I know that Chairman Comer wants that, and I want it, and everybody on our committee wants it.
Wow. So I mean, apparently someone's blocking it. I mean, they dragged in all the Trump kids day and night. Adam Schiff was dragging them in for hoaxes.
Oh yeah. So I mean, again, that's the Uni-party. But the thing is, Benny, we should be so aggressive at bringing these people in. And guess what? People keep saying, hey, it's dead stop, full on stop since you don't have a speaker. That's not true. These committees can go on. The depositions are still going to go on. Transcribed interviews are going to go on. The committee hearings are going to go on. They need to go on. And so why did they send it? I couldn't understand it. Why were they telling people you should go home last night? They were telling people to go home. Why? What? I'm here in D.C. because I want to work. I'm ready to work. And we've got stuff to do. And there's a hearing, a deposition tomorrow I'm going to attend. All these things. And I'm baffled, Benny. I'm just utterly baffled at the self-immolation. I do not view removing McCarthy as self-immolation. I view that as a chance to have hope. I think when Obama talked change and hope, maybe this is what he meant. We've made a change, and so I'm very hopeful that we can get some stuff done for the American people.
So while we were live right now, your colleague Troy Nehls has tweeted that many people will be supporting Donald Trump for the next Speaker of the House. Personally spoken with Luna and Stube and Jackson and Moore and others. Your thoughts on the future here, Congressman?
So, Benny, I am now considered a pariah in the conference. So what that means is if I were to say I support anybody publicly, they have no chance because the vast majority of the conference would immediately say, if Biggs wants him, we're done with that candidate. So here's what I want. I want the most conservative person who can get 218 votes. And if that's Donald Trump, then I'm all in. I love Donald Trump. I want him to be president. I'm looking forward to campaigning with him. But the bottom line is this. Whoever is the most conservative can get the 218 votes. That's who I'm for.
I mean, it does seem like we just so get, in the words of Donald Trump, schlonged as a Republican Party because while Democrats put up hardened radicals, we need to pass the bill. We need to pass the bill to find out what's inside of it, right? Nancy Pelosi, like insider trade, all of it. Hardened radicals, like we always get John Boehners and Paul Ryans. Like we never get conservative speakers. We get Denny Hasserts, right? Like we never get actual conservatives. Democrats get wild-eyed Marxist radicals to agitate their base, and we get we get like the leftovers, man. And it would be really nice to get a conservative speaker. Would you be in support of Jim Jordan? Not trying to put you on the spot here, but Jim Jordan has announced. I'm not going to. Again, if I, and I'm serious when I say this, if I support somebody, I've had people call me and tell me that they're interested in running, but they've asked me not to say that I would support them. Okay. I'm serious when I say that. But to answer your question, why does it happen, Benny? It's because of the Uni-party. It is because of the deep state, the swamp, whatever you want to call it. And so the Republicans, you saw it on display last night or yesterday in some of the people who are getting up to say Kevin McCarthy's done a stellar job, blah, 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 blah. Do you really think Kevin McCarthy did a stellar job? And if so, why don't you get off the fence and tell me, get on the bullhorn and tell me what we've accomplished? And they can't. They can't. Yeah. So I want someone who is conservative, can get the 218, and actually says, you know what, we're going to have to fight the Senate and Joe Biden in a way that we haven't fought before. Things like saying, Joe Biden, you might not get a budget. We're going to fund a few things, the things like our military personnel, like our Border Patrol personnel. But we're not going to fund your stinking Green New Deal stuff.
We're not going to give you anything else you want until you actually start funding or supporting the border, where you actually order border enforcement, where we know that ICE is going to actually, that you're taking the handcuffs off, and ICE can actually remove the 1.25 million people who have removal orders, get them out of here, where you can actually allow Border Patrol people to put their hands on people coming across the border and saying, no, you cannot enter anymore. If we don't do that, it will just be perpetuating this thing. That's why I look at how can we stand 2 more years of Biden? How can we stand another 18 months of a speaker who was not take on the administration in that way?
Yes. I mean, we started the show with John Boehner weeping with Barack Obama, cutting ads with Barack Obama. I believe you served with John Boehner, and then also Paul Ryan cutting an ad saying he's going to build the wall. Month 1 of Donald Trump's administration, I will build the wall. Paul Ryan lied to us. Paul Ryan did not build the wall, didn't even try. They lie, and people are just sick of the lying. So one way or the other, they're done with this model of government. And so I suppose my final question for you, Congressman, is, it seemed like Ukraine funding was a real turd in the punch bowl here. People are getting pretty upset about this. Now, I go out into Democrat communities regularly for a Man on the Street show, and Democrat voters, hardened Democrat voters, are like, "What the hell are we doing in Ukraine? Like, what? Look at these potholes on my street. Why Ukraine?" I feel like it's a winner for Republicans, and I feel like the right messaging could really put a shoulder into this, because this is a huge potential vector of pain for Democrats to try and explain to their voters who life sucks in these Democrat cities that Ukraine deserves all the money and not their streets and not their cops. Can you talk to me about what would be the calculus for funding Ukraine? Could you actually get that stripped out? Could you actually save us from World War III here with a conservative speaker?
Yeah, you might be able to, but here's our problem again. And I'm with you. I mean, I mentioned this on the floor yesterday. You've given $130 billion to Ukraine.
Yeah.
But you won't secure your own border. All the things you just said. But here's what you've got. The Uni-party, again, I keep bringing it back. Trump was right. The swamp is real. I didn't believe it. I came into office at the same time Trump did. I'd done work at the UN. I thought the UN was the most corrupt. I've told you this before. I thought the UN was the most corrupt institution in the world until I came to the United States Congress, and it's like, hold our beer, I mean, here's the deal. What goes on here is this notion that the Uni-party they want control and power. The lobbyists there, they want control and power. People actually campaigned when I was running against McCarthy. People stood up in conference and said, it should be McCarthy because he raises far more money than anybody else. That's what they think is leadership, I guess. So when we start talking about, can you strip the Ukraine funding out? You got the Democrat war hawks and you got the neocons in the Republican Party, and they come together and they say, oh, as long as it takes, as much as it takes. And we're just going to keep pouring money in there. You know what? How many dachas on the Black Sea coast can Zelensky build? I mean, for mercy's sakes, it's enough. It is enough. And so I introduced amendments to bump it out. They finally had to take it out. Marjorie Taylor Greene helped get it out. Gates helped get it out. Some of the same knuckleheads that are pariahs in our party, and apparently. We got out that funding, and people were coming to me, but Andy, it's only $300 million. What's wrong with you, Andy? It's only $300 million. It's only $300 million, right? I get it. It doesn't even fill in the dot in the $1 trillion decimal point. I get all that, but the bottom line is you've got to start thinking of America's citizens first. Yeah. You have to start taking care of them. So that's a long way and a ranting type of way to say, Benny, we're fighting an uphill battle, no matter who the speaker is. But I tell you what, if you have the right speaker can go into those people and say, this is no longer acceptable. We gave them a bunch of money. We're not going into a forever war. We're pulling back out. We're done. And that speaker would get the votes. But you have to have the courage. You have to have the communication. And you have to basically sit down with everybody You can't just say, I'm going to sit down with my lieutenants who tell me I'm wonderful, and sit down with the K Street lobbyists, who, by the way, are making money hand over fist in places like Ukraine.
Yes.
So, I mean,
we're learning more about that by the day. And your fellow members of Congress who go and start lobbying shops, man, they're getting plum assignment. This money's going right back. This is just a bailout for D.C. This is a bailout for Washington. It has nothing to do with Ukraine.
It's a money laundering type of cycle. And what happens is, and the Democrats have done this for years. They're great at this. And Republicans not so great. So we funnel money to all these programs around whether it's social welfare, whatever. And those people then in turn take a portion of that money and fund it back into the PACs and the election arm of the Democrat Party. And then they just keep cycling back money. It's a money laundering scheme.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see. It's nice to see somebody follow through. It's nice to see It's nice to see DC get a little panicked, just a little bit. It's wonderful to see, and we thank you for your part in that, Congressman. And of course, we are with you in this fight and support you in all of your work, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone follow Congressman Biggs, please, on X. Make sure that his voice is as powerful as it can possibly be. 772,000 people cannot be wrong. Let's get him to 1 million. Godspeed, Congressman.
Hey, thanks, Benny. Take care, man.